Hello friends, this is attorney Javier Castillo. Today I've got 5 things to do when your loved one passes away in order to avoid identity theft. These are the 5 basic things to consider. Number 1, getting a copy of the certificate of death. Number 2, reporting the death to banks and financial institutions. Number 3, reporting the death to government agencies. Number 4, some tips on what not to include in the obituary. And number 5, what to do 1 month after the passing. Okay, so number 1, the death certificate. You need to get a copy and send copies of the certificate to the 3 major credit bureaus and request that a death alert be placed on your loved one's account. You can do this online. Search for Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion. Now, obtaining a copy of the death certificate can be tricky depending on what relationship you had with the deceased. If you are the next of kin, like the surviving spouse or an immediate child, you shouldn't have any problem. The funeral home will provide you with certified copies as soon as they are available. Usually takes between 2 to 4 weeks after the death has been reported. And keep in mind that there is a cost to get the certified copies, but you will need these. You should get at least 15 copies. Now, if you're not a surviving spouse or an immediate relative, you may have to obtain a court order to get the death certificate. Now, you may be wondering, why would someone who's not an immediate relative trying to get a death certificate? Well, that's just how life is sometimes. Not everyone is fortunate to be survived by a close relative. In such cases, friends take over and they administer the estate, they do the probate, everything. But in such cases, you can obtain a copy of the certificate with the assistance of an attorney, or sometimes through the probate case or similar petition in the probate court. All right. So number 2, the banks. Reporting the death to the banks and other financial institutions. You'll want to set a copy of your loved one's death certificate to the bank and other financial institutions they were doing business with, like credit unions or insurance companies. Send them a copy and request that the account or accounts be frozen or transferred. Some accounts can be transferred to a beneficiary depending on the account type. Notifying the banks will stop anyone from getting access to these accounts. I can't tell you how many times I hear from clients how certain family members or friends take things from their deceased family member once they've passed away and the house is there empty. Sometimes they will even try to make bank withdrawals, and sometimes they succeed, and sometimes those amounts are significant. Okay, number 3, government agencies. You'll want to report the death to the Social Security Administration, the IRS, and in California to the Franchise Tax Board. Send them a copy of the certificate and let them know your loved one has passed away. They will then flag their files for further administration. Okay, number 4, some tips on writing the obituary. These are a few things you do not want to include in the obituary. You don't want to include your loved one's date of birth, their place of birth, their last address, or their job. I understand sometimes their job is actually part of their identity, so you might want to include that. Like if they were the mayor, they were on the police force or the fire department, a news crew, something noteworthy, you can include that. But typically, you don't want to include that because those facts can be used to steal someone's identity. Now, if you are a successor trustee of your loved one's trust or the executor of their will, keep in mind that you have a fiduciary duty to act in their best interest. And that means that's the highest duty in the law. So it's very important that you take these things seriously. Okay. Number 5, 1 month after the death, what to do. So if you can, get a copy of their credit report and check for any suspicious activity. Now, at that point, you should have an idea of what has to be done to wrap up their affairs or what to do with their assets. If they died with any significant assets, you'll need to check if they have a trust, a will, or if they had neither. Either way, you'll have some work to do to get their estate administered. Now, these are just 5 basic things you can do to ensure that your loved one's identity is not stolen after they pass away. But associated with these things, there are other things to keep in mind, like what to do if some monies were taken from the bank, what to do if the bank says they need a court order to do anything further, what to do if your loved one did have a trust but you don't know what to do with it, and what to do if they did have some significant assets like a home, but they didn't have a trust or a will. What do you do then? Now, if you need help with any of these items, you can contact us for a free consultation. Thanks for listening, and God bless.